Friends, I am so excited about this next segment with my dear friend, Brittany Nelson of Deeper Kidmin. We all know how important it is to be growing constantly in children's ministry, and we can't just depend on one person to grow. We have to take responsibility of our own growth. And that is exactly what Brittany is here to talk to us about today. So in a few moments, I will be joined by Brittany Nelson. See you soon. Hey, you guys, get back in here because I have the incredible Brittany Nelson. You guys, if you don't know Brittany, just know that she is the white Caucasian version of Esther Moreno.
And what an honor that is, Esther.
But seriously, you guys, I absolutely love Brittany and everything that she's doing with Deeper Kidmin. Brittany, if you don't know her, she is also an incredible trainer, training leaders and children's ministry teams across the country as well. And I'm so honored to have her here at our wake up call virtual gathering for children's ministry workers. Brittany knows we got an opportunity to kind of really discuss the heart behind what she is going to share with you today. And most of you know, we talked about this in the beginning. When we started this, we wanted to create something that wasn't just for the children's ministry leader. Yes, it is for them, but also for their teams, also for those who are co-laboring alongside them. And I'm so grateful for Brittany because she is talking to us today about training, about the importance of growth. When I first joined children's ministry, and I don't know about you, Brittany, when I first joined and I was just kind of serving as a volunteer, growth and training and development was not something that I immediately went to. So I'm so excited that you are going to share with us today. You guys, Brittany is going to take it away, but don't leave immediately because I want to share some of the amazing things that she's doing, some amazing resources that she has out right now that you need to take advantage of for your children's ministry. So Brittany, I am going to go ahead and give it to you.
All right. Thanks, Esther. So I'm really excited that Esther asked me to talk about this today. A little bit about me. I'm a former children's pastor. So I was a full-time children's pastor for about 5 years at a local church. Now I am a children's ministry volunteer. So I joke that I get to do all of like the fun parts of children's ministry without some of the more difficult parts of children's ministry. But I'm the second grade small group leader at our church, and I absolutely love it. And I love that Esther invited me to talk about training and growth in children's ministry, both as a leader, like the person on staff, but then also as a volunteer too, because it's true. Like I think sometimes our volunteers maybe look at serving, maybe we look at serving as like just something else on our to-do list, or, you know, one of the check boxes on our like holy to-do list for the week of ways, you know, that we can grow and we can serve, which is good. It's good to do that and to want to do that and to include serving and volunteering as part of the spiritual disciplines that help you in your relationship with God. But I think we have to dig a little bit deeper, both as leaders and as volunteers. We have to think about how we can be growing in the roles that we're placed in. So I'm in Georgia, located northeast of Atlanta, about an hour and a half outside the city. And just a couple weeks ago, we went to Home Depot with my husband and my 2 little girls, and we got our tomato plants. So every summer we plant a couple of tomato plants in our backyard so we can have tomatoes all summer and part of the fall. And as we were, you know, putting them in the ground and getting the fertilizer out, and my girls are, you know, playing with the watering can, I started thinking about this idea of growth and what's required to grow, and thinking about this subject that Esther, you know, had already reached out about and wanted me to talk about. And so just getting this picture as we're planting our tomatoes for the summer of what growth requires and what growth needs, like what has to be present for growth to happen. But first, I just want to remind us all that growth and training and growing in our leadership, whether we're paid to do it or volunteer, is a biblical mandate, right? It's part of what God calls us to do, to continue training, to continue growing. In Philippians 1, Paul's talking about, may your love abound more and more with knowledge and depth of insight, right? So our love, our service abounds in knowledge and depth of insight, meaning that it's influenced by those things. I also think of 1 Corinthians 9, right? When Paul talks about, do you not know in a race that all runners run, but only one gets the prize? Run in such a way to get the prize, right? So when you're serving in children's ministry, run in such a way to win the prize. Don't run like someone flailing aimlessly, right, who has no idea what they're doing, but be intentional about it. Show up ready to serve, knowing that you've invested time, not only in preparing for that one Sunday morning or Wednesday night, but also invested time in preparing yourself to be the best leader that you can possibly be. So the things that growth need to happen, the things that are required for growth to happen. First, I think of kind of the seeds, right? Or the seeds or the plant itself. And that's like your vision or your goals. What do you want to see happen in the ministry that you lead, in the small group that you lead, in the nursery classroom where you serve? Like, what are your goals when you walk into that space? Is it helping new moms who are dropping off their babies for the first time feel comfortable? Right? What can you do to create a better environment for that and train yourself to help those moms feel comfortable? Maybe one of your goals is to create an environment where kids feel comfortable asking questions. What kind of training do you need to have to know the developmental stages of kids, to understand the type of questions they can even be asking, right? So that's the seeds, the plant, the vision, and the goals that you have. And then I think of, you have to water the plant to help it grow. That's the knowledge and the skills that God has already given you. Right. So those are the spiritual gifts that the Holy Spirit has blessed you with, that are unique to you. So what are those? If you don't know what your spiritual gifts are, there are tons of tests online. So just go Google it and you can find a spiritual gifts test that will help you kind of figure it out. But lean into those, right? Look at ways to strengthen and find training in those areas, in the natural giftedness in the ways that God has gifted you already. Then I think of the fertilizer, right? Because we always put fertilizer in our tomato plants to make sure that they grow and produce well, and bear much fruit, right? And so the fertilizer is like the resources, right? The resources that we have available, which in our digital world, there are so many resources available to us: books, podcasts, virtual trainings like this one, YouTube channels, Instagram accounts. Like, there's literally knowledge at your fingertips at all times with our phones, right? So as a ministry leader, how are you learning? How are you growing? What resources are you connecting to and taking in and consuming? Because we all consume a lot of information. We all consume a lot of content in our lives. So what does it look like to be intentional with some of that content, to be consuming things, taking in that fertilizer that's going to accelerate your learning, accelerate your growth, accelerate your training as a leader? And then as a volunteer, do some research on just even the age of the kids that you serve. Do some research on your second grade small group and know kind of the developmental phases of where those kids are at. Do some research on, if you're not sure even what it's like to share the gospel with a child or how to effectively share the gospel. If you're a large group teacher and you get to teach the lesson to kids, do some research on today's kids and how they learn. Digital natives, which kids today are, which basically just means they have grown up in a world where the internet has always existed. They learn differently than kids in the past. So do a little research and find out how they learn differently and how you can adjust your teaching strategies to better influence them and to better engage them with the gospel. So that's the fertilizer, right? The resources, the mentorship. And then I think this is probably the most important thing, the soil, right? So the soil is the context and the community in which you grow and learn, because I think the best learning happens in the context of community. The best growth happens in the context of community. So for ministry leaders on staff, that it's your job. Like, what are you doing to grow for yourself? And what kind of communities are you finding for yourself to grow within? Whether it's a coaching group, a cohort, even some of the Facebook groups online like this one. Like, how are you connecting with other ministry leaders to learn and grow from those around you? Both online, but also in your community. Like, what would it look like to have a quarterly lunch with some of the children's ministry leaders in your area, just to gather together to pray, to talk about challenges, to learn from each other, or even to just do like a simple book club. Maybe you all read a book together and then talk about it once a quarter. And then if you're in a volunteer, the community of the other people serving with you, which kind of going back to the ministry leader, you can create that community for your volunteers. I think that's a really valuable and important part of volunteer training and creating the volunteer culture of your church, in which volunteers feel like they're part of a community, even within your ministry, can be really, really powerful. But for the volunteers, like, where are the communities that you're learning and growing? When you're not serving, are you at service? Are you, or at least watching the services online, right? Are you still growing within the context of the community of your church? Because that has to happen. That community aspect has to be there. Because if you have a plant, if you have water, and then you have the fertilizer, but you don't have anywhere to plant it, like you don't actually have a ground or even a pot to put it in, nothing's going to grow. And so you need that community, you need that context. The environment for growth has to happen with others. So find that community, find those people who are going to help you grow, help take you deeper. And again, we have so many resources available to us, right? So maybe right now, as you're watching this, like, put in the comments, share in the chat, like somewhere in the Facebook group, post about what's one resource that you like to learn from, whether it's a blog, whether it's a podcast, whether it's a book that you've read. Like, let's learn together right now. Like, share an idea, share a resource, share a community that you learn from in the comments right now. And as we kind of wrap up this part, remember, leaders, that learning and growing sets a good example for your team, right? So if you are a children's ministry leader and you want your volunteers to be putting in time and effort into growing and training outside of the trainings that you offer, we have to set the example first, right? We have to show them that we are learning and we are trying to grow and wanting to grow in our leadership and in our ministry to children. And now for the volunteers, it's so important, right? Your children's ministry leader loves you and values you for what you do. And thank you for the time and energy that you give to the kids and to the ministry that you serve with every week. And then I would just challenge you, find a way to dig deeper. Find a way to grow on your own and not just always be waiting for the ministry leader to say, hey, check out this blog post, or hey, check out this, but those same resources are available to you as volunteers. There are podcasts, there are books, there are Instagram accounts, YouTube channels, whatever. There's so many places where all of us in partnership, ministry leaders and volunteers, can grow together. And when we do that, right, when we're growing, when we add all these elements of growth, the soil, the water, the fertilizer, right, all the things, the community, the vision, the goals, the resources, when we add them all together, what happens, right? We bear fruit. We get tomatoes that we can make our BLTs with. And so it's so important for the value of our ministry, because I really, really think there's a cap on your ministry if you are not growing as a leader. Like, there's only a certain level that you can get to, that your ministry can get to, and you, like, that level is you. Like, you're the ceiling. So whatever kind of level of leadership you grow into, that's the level of ministry that you're going to be able to lead and going to be able to produce fruit in. So that's my encouragement for you today. Growth and training, it's so important all across the board, all levels of leadership. And I want to close with a verse from 1 Timothy 4. So in 1 Timothy 4, he's talking about kind of training, like training yourself to be godly, right? So in verse 7, he says, train yourself to be godly. For verse 8, for physical training is of some value, but godliness has value for all things, holding promise for both the present life and the life to come. And then he goes through and he talks about all these things. This is why we labor, because we've put our hope in the living God, not in something temporary. Command and teach all these things. Don't let anyone look down on you because you are young, but set the example. Do not neglect your gift, like all these things. And then in verse 15, it says, be diligent in these matters and give yourself wholly to them. Watch your life and your doctrine closely. Persevere in them, because if you do, you will save both yourself and your hearers. So when we train ourselves to not just be godly, right, but to be godly leaders in whatever context we serve in, when we persevere in that, we will save both ourselves and the kids and families that we have the privilege of serving and leading. So that's my encouragement for you today. Go check out some of the resources that somebody posted in the chat. Learn something new from someone else and keep growing.
I love it. I love it. Brittany, I loved how you mentioned just the importance of growing on your own and just being intentional. I always call us twins. As you were volunteering and serving in your local children's ministry, I have had the honor of actually doing the same in this season. And something that I noticed, and for those who are watching, we know in children's ministry, what do they always tell us? We have to be flexible and be ready for anything, right?
Yep.
But as a member, a part of a church plant, we don't have all of the resources together. We are getting to that point, but we don't always have all of those. And one of the things, that I noticed that I really needed to jump on was my own personal growth and training when it comes to special needs. Because we may not have all the resources together, but every child is welcome into our environment. So I had to ask myself, what am I doing to prepare myself to make sure that I'm ready, and just really being intentional to really being prepared for when some of those children who need us the most come into our environments. Have I intentionally trained myself? Have I shared that with those who are around me so that we can really be able to love and point every child to Christ? So I love how you talked about that. And that's for everybody, right, Brittany? That is for whether you are leading the department, as you mentioned, or co-laboring alongside those. So Brittany, thank you so much. I loved how you mentioned resources. And I have been one to grab resources from you. Tell us, before you get out of here, I want to share. I know that you have this incredible resource, Time to Update.
Yep.
And this amazing woman,
I know who wrote the foreword. She's awesome.
American, so cool. But it's me if you're watching, and
it's Esther.
But tell us about Time to Update, and then go into just a little bit about Deeper Kidmin and how we can get information about that.
Sure. So Time to Update, 7 areas to integrate digital discipleship into your children's ministry strategy. So it really talks about what your ministry strategy looks like as a whole, and then how you can allow the digital world to influence it to make it more effective. Because we live in a digital world, everyone is influenced by technology. That should also influence the way that we reach and serve kids, families, volunteers, parents, and everything in between. Even the structure of some of our administrative systems can be changed and influenced by technology. So check out that book. It's available on Amazon. It's also available from deeperkidmin.com. An amazing person did write the foreword of the book. Esther, thank you for helping me with that. And
guys, we will make sure that all of those links are in here. And I love Time to Update. And Brittany, one of my favorite things about this is that there's literally not another resource that's out there in particular for children's ministry. I think for so many of us, and I know for me, I've had to sometimes grab books where it is talking about topics maybe about digital technology, and really having to kind of weave that into children's ministry. What can I take? What do I have to leave? But this, you guys, this is a resource that is created for us. So if this is not a part of your library and you are in any form of children's ministry, you need to make sure that you grab a copy of this.
Thanks. Yeah.
Brittany, thank you so much for hanging out with us. Really quick, how can we follow you?
Okay, yes. So Deeper Kidmin, make sure I can spell it. D-E-E-P. Yeah, how many E's are there? Just 2 E's. deeperkidmin.com. It's kind of like a Teachers Pay Teachers or Download Youth Ministry, but for the children's ministry world. A digital Etsy is what I've used, a way I've described it as well, but for children's ministry leaders. So there's lots of resources on there, from games to lessons to volunteer trainings that you can use, everything in between. So deeperkidmin.com. And then we're also on Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, YouTube, all as @deeperkidmin.
Awesome. Well, there you have it. Brittany, thank you so much for joining us and hanging out with us. You guys do not want to check out. Go ahead, take a break, grab some coffee, but don't check all the way out because you do not want to miss a piece of this virtual gathering. It is created for you. It is created, as Brittany said, for your growth, for training, for your development. In the words of Brittany, become one of the tomatoes in her garden.
Yes. Now I'm going to think about you guys all summer long when we pick up tomatoes. I'll be praying for you.
So we will see you guys in just a little bit. Don't go away.